Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring the legendary Ben the Barman in charge of the Bretonnians up against Khalid and the Wood Elf forces, and it's going to be a really fun, interesting game. And the reason I wanted to showcase this game was actually because of something I've been seeing happen a ton on ladder, which is the Wood Elf Air Force. But before we get to that, let's hop in here and have a quick little look at the Bretonnian build. So the backbone of every good Bretonnian force, as we know, is the glorious peasant mob. Cheap and incredibly unhappy to be here. These guys are going to be merely basically pincushions for arrows to pick them apart and just waste the ammunition on the Wood Elves. Take the initial assault as well to allow the cavalry and other units to really pack a punch and deal the damage. In the secondary battle line, we do have a load of spearmen at arms. These guys are slightly more elite, but still going to be doing a relatively similar job. And then we get to the actual, units which can punish the enemy. We have triple peasant bowmen here dotted along. It looks like basic ones, no pox arrows here because they've gone a little bit cheaper to ensure they can get massive value from this cavalry. We have Knights of the Realm dotted all the way along, an absolute ton, with Grail Knights mixed in there as well. And of course, Knights of the Realm do come with that glorious anti-large, and Grail Knights anti-large as well. So we're trying to pin down large dragons, treemen, and the like with all of this cavalry. And just because it's anti-large also doesn't mean it can't run over infantry very effectively, especially at cycle charging. So I like this pick quite a lot. Up in the skies, we do have King Leon Kerr, the mighty man himself, and he's a pain for Wood Elves to deal with in general. The Sword of Crone is a very powerful hex ability, but he really comes into his own with the Lion Shield, getting 44% missile and magic resistance, makes him incredibly tanky up against that elvish bowfire. We also have a Damsel of Life down on the ground with a simple Earthblood. Now, for the forces of the Wood Elves, and the build I really want to focus on for the most part, we do have triple Hawk Riders all the way chevroned up to Silver Chevron. Now, these guys have had a few changes in the recent patch and DLC. They do now have a 360 line of sight, or 360 firing arc, and can Vanguard as well. So certainly more utility to these guys all around. And at the same time, they have very good armor piercing in melee, which gives them quite a nice niche at charging to the rear of enemy cavalry, knights, and the like. Up in the skies, we do have the classic, the Glade Lady, and the dragon's kind of white eyes there looking incredibly creepy. She's, of course, going to be coming with Prey of Raymer, Arrows of Kurnos, as well as the breath attack from the dragon. It's good to see the lady getting a little bit of love again after kind of the new loving for the sisters and so on. We do have a ton of Eternal Guard dotted throughout the front line, just solid troops. They're going to be able to beat back peasants wave after wave of them, and as well that bonus versus large really going to help out against the cavalry and lead in the ground force. We also have a Branch Wraith as well, coming with the Pendulum to help deal with archers and an Earthblood. Then we have Dryades dotted around to pack a little bit more of a punch in the secondary line, and we have the Enigmas, there we go, trying to get that word out there, which is the Regiment of Renowned Zotes. Now, these guys I think are actually quite considerably better than the basic version, and that is simply because of the leadership buff. So I believe the normal ones have about 60 leadership, which is the same leadership as like Beastmen forces, and the amount of times I've had Zotes kind of break in important engagements is a little bit worrying. So these guys with their added leadership certainly do help quite a lot, and they obviously come with regrowth and flesh to stone. So without further ado, guys, let's hop in here and have a little look at the battle. So Hawk Riders are going to be pressuring straight from the off, and it looks like they are going to be going after the king, who has to be a little bit careful here. Yes, he does have the Lion Shield and is pretty tanky with Earthbloods, but this is a lot of Hawk Riders, and if they swarm you, you can certainly be in a lot of trouble. It looks like for the most part, Knights of the Realm are being shot in the back as well, which is certainly not something they're going to be too happy to see. They are going to be darting down onto these Knights, which is going to do some pretty big damage. Hawk Riders kind of swinging in from the flanks, getting a nice full surround on these guys, although a few of the Hawks do pop up back in the air, and it's become a bit more of a staggered engagement. Sword of Crone has gone down. The Hawk Rider's taken an absolute pounding so far, but in comes the Glade Lady. She's flying over here. We have the Zotes considering pressuring as well, but it looks like they are indeed going to be falling back slightly as the Hawk Riders get up into the skies, one unit being terrified away. But good thing about Hawk Riders is they still got a lot of their models here, still 15 out of 18, so their damage output will still be relatively strong. The main battle line is underway as peasants throw themselves against the fierce shield wall here of the Eternal Guard, and elven units in general tend to outclass humans, and this is simply no different here, and the Eternal Guard will quite easily mop up the peasants, but I suppose it is at least distracting them. Up in the skies, it looks like the Hawk Riders did manage to get back into the air, and the king is now completely surrounded without the sword to help buff him. Even with the Lion Shield active, those are Hawk Riders and the Glade Lady combined are just annihilating the king, and it's not over yet. His punishment is still to arrive, with the Prey of Raymer going to be pinning him in location as he attempts to flee. He won't be fighting back, and the Hawk Riders pick apart the king, and down the mighty lord goes, and that is a very early loss there for the forces of Bretonnia. It looks like the Enigmas, the Zotes here, are just simply going to be counter-charging in onto Knights of the Realm, but good micro here by Ben, deciding to actually pull back rather than charging into Braced Eternal Guard and the Fury of the Zotes, instead kind of floating over to this side to run over some of the unbraced Dryads and the unsupported Eternal Guard. And it's a messy fight for sure, still very even. Wood Elves in this slight ascendancy here, as it looks like the Zotes with a lovely Flesh to Stone are going to be able to capture some more Knights of the Realm and force them back. And up in the skies you can see the Hawk Riders moving in a pack, hunting down these knights wherever they go. Your horse cannot carry you far enough as the winged vengeance comes down. It looks like they're actually looking to go into melee as well, not firing too many shots, instead really deciding to try and get those rear attacks. And as we said early on, these guys do come in with pretty decent AP in melee, allowing them to pick off a lot of knights on the charge, which is glorious stuff. In the front line, the wave after wave of peasant and good cycle charging in the front line is slowly grinding down this Wood Elf force. You can see a lot of the Eternal Guard are stationary as well and not really active. Obviously the Wood Elf player is trying to micro a lot with his Air Force instead. Zotes, however, are relatively healthy at this point, and they're going to come charging right in the gullet here of the main battle, right down the throat of these Bretonnian forces, trying to push back the Grail Knights. But all they're going to meet is some spearmen at arms, these brave men pitting their lives on the line to try and slow down the horde here, and that will allow the archers a bit more time to shoot, although a lovely pendulum it looks like we just missed took out 2 units and forced them back, at least for now. In the back lines, the combination of Hawk Riders and Glade Lady are really mopping up these knights with deadly efficiency. This is some scary stuff, this mobile corn. At this point though, they have a lot of ammunition left. I'd probably stay in the skies a little while and get some value from that as well, and push back and shut down these peasant bowmen so they can't come back to the fray and get any value. I think could be pretty huge. But that is if the Wood Elf front line can hold. Eternal Guard's battling strong here. Knights of the Realm do get a lovely rear charge, but still don't want to stay in combat for too long. It looks like we have another big blob fight going on, with the Zotes slowly beating down the Knights of the Realm while saturated on top of the Eternal Guard, and Hawks once again being used in combat with that dragon, doing some massive damage throughout. And it looks like the left hand side of the Bretonnian forces is broken and starting to run for the hills. These Hawk Riders certainly want to chase these guys off the battlefield. There is so much damage potential left on them that if they come back and get healed up, it's some scary stuff for sure. Peasant Bowmen unleashing some shots, trying to focus down the Branch Wraith, which probably isn't the best idea at the moment. I would definitely focus down the Zotes and the Dragon, but maybe they moved out of position, so these guys are on auto fire. Getting the Branch Wraith off the field would be nice, because it would take away the potential for healing as well for this Wood Elf force. Knights have been allowed to rally, which I think is a huge misplay on the Hawk Rider perspective. They kind of floated out wide here, and were chasing down peasant mobs and the like, and there's some Dryads just kind of running for the hills, which is a little bit odd, for sure. Anyway, more Hawk Riders are going to be darting in once more onto the Peasant Bowmen, doing some obviously lovely shock damage, going to be scaring these very weak combatants off the field very quickly. However, those Overwatch fire coming in from the 2 rallied units of Peasant Bowmen, unleashing shots, and the Hawk Riders are certainly not the tankiest. Coming with a mighty 15 armour, bow fire is a very good counter to them, although bows do sometimes struggle to hit air targets a little bit. The Glade Lady is going to be darting after these Grail Knights, and she's a little isolated here. This is a scary pocket. Looks like the Hawk Riders are considering looping up and around to get a rear charge back in once more, which is certainly how they do some good damage, but these Knights are no joke at all, and Eternal Guard need to get over there and help support, but it looks like they've been hammered down instead by Knights of the Realm. Eternal Guard not having a fun time at all. Down here in this main blob fight, and this could certainly decide the engagement. It looks like a Flesh to Stone has been used up on the Glade Lady, and the Knights are still struggling. The Hawk Riders doing fantastic work. I'm very interested to see their damage output at the end of this battle. Even the Damsel has chucked her life on the line in an attempt to bring down the vile and evil dragon and the twisted elf who does indeed lead her. The Knights are doing a pretty good job here. Looks like the Glade Lady is struggling to get out of combat, and Hawks are falling left, right and centre. But saying that, there's a bit of a mixed match. So Glade Lady is forced off as well as the Hawk Riders, but both units of Knights are wavering and running for the hills. The damsel kind of been the last one left to chase off the Glade Lady, but she has indeed been shattered, and this is kind of a big problem with going so elite. You make one too many mistakes, and all of a sudden it is game over. I think there's not much hope at all left for the Wood Elves. Zotes, who are one of their last powerhouses to deal with the cavalry, are running. There's still decent healing left on the field for the Bretonnian forces, and the leadership of the Wood Elves is in complete disarray at this point. Now, this there's been an update recently, so this is on a different patch of the game, so you may see some units idle, kind of hiding over in the corners. These ones are maybe just forgotten about, but it could also be a bug from the replay, unfortunately, but hopefully it should be relatively close to what does happen. I'll say more on that in the end, actually, on how patches affect replays. But anyway, Peasant Bowmen are unleashing shots into the Eternal Guard now, having a rather long trek ahead of them to come over here and shut down these filthy, unwashed peasants, who are going to be doing some nice, consistent damage over the course of this long march. And the damsel as well can come in, do some nice cycle charging, get these guys to face the wrong way, take arrows in the flank and the rear. Isn't going to be a fun day for this elfish crew at all. The remainder of the knights, who are battered and bruised but still victorious, going to be doing some cycle charging into the front line to try and break the Eternal Guard and help support the spearmen at arms who have fought valiantly for so long to hold back the tide and allow the peasant archers to really kind of start racking up some kills, doing some nice work overall. Hawk Riders are now just desperately trying to get away from the enemy as much as possible, help support the Branch Wraith as well, and come back into the main fray. But I'm pretty sure it's game over at this point. Balance power is relatively even, but with all of the Will of kind of backbone of their force being forced off here, and it's just kind of down to you. There's a few Hawk Riders and Branch Wraiths. I don't think they stand much chance. There's a decent amount of ammunition left on the Peasant Bowmen as well, as the Knights just roam as a pack. And as long as they stick together and don't get isolated, don't let the Hawk Riders kind of pick them apart in unfavourable engagements for the Knights, I think they should be all good, especially when protecting their glorious damsel here. Branch Wraith being used at the moment to chase off some spearmen at arms, trying to get their way back into the game where possible. Looks like we are going to see a pendulum down the line. Overcast pendulum. It looks like a few of the knights did manage to dodge. Fantastic micro by both players. Really good attempted cast. But Ben is a sneaky one. He's a real hard player to kind of get those plays on him, and a nice dodge with the knights is going to allow him to surround the Branch Wraith and finish that poor woodland spirit off. And the rest of the Wood Elf forces are in complete disarray. Some Dryads returning to the field, and they would be able to clear up pretty much all of this ground force here if they could shut down the peasant archers quick enough. But with the Knights realm in, it's just really not a good possibility at this moment. Branch Wraith, who is the last bastion of hope for the Wood Elves, the last bit of leadership, has been lanced down here and is running for the hills, completely shattered, and that should trigger army losses in just a second once these Dryads take a little bit of fire. Even in the late stages, Bretonnians remaining disciplined and kind of finishing out the game strong, pulling back with the spearmen, allowing the archers to rain in fire just that little while longer before turning and engaging. As of course, Dryads still going to have a bloody affair for them as they rip and tear limbs and skulls off these men in a last kind of middle finger there. Just as I say, that a Dryad gets sent flying by a rear charge of knights as these tree spirits not having the best time. They're in the desert, not their natural habitat, and they're certainly showing that here, being completely surrounded and forced off the field for good. So we are going to fast forward a little bit here, as it looks like we're simply waiting for the remnants of the Wood Elf force to get close enough to be shattered, and it shall be a Pyrrhic victory there to the Bretonnian forces. Very well played to Khalid there, with a very interesting Wood Elf build and cool style as well. Combat Hawk Riders is certainly something you don't get to see terribly often, and very well played to Ben the Barman as well. And a massive shout out to him for sending this one in via my Discord. So anyway guys, hope you did enjoy this battle. If you did, feel free to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. And now let's do a tiny little bit of a breakdown. So let's have a little look at these Hawk Riders. So 1,000 damage value on one unit, which only got 9 kills, but of course they are all up against Knights. 1,500 damage value and 1,200. So fantastic stats across the board. Big damage dealt. And I think if they were just the tiny mistake at the end of dropping in with the Glade Lady, and then committing with the remaining Hawk Riders, I think really cost the Wood Elves there. At that point, the battle was kind of on a knife's edge. I think if she had used her Nets of Amantok on some of the key remaining knights and focus fire down with the Hawk Riders, who all had pretty decent ammunition at the end, they could have been a little bit more patient, picked apart those knights, so when they did come in for the big alpha strike, there's no counter punch coming in to really finish them off. But you know, that's easy to say from my point of view. There was a ton of micro in that Wood Elf build, and it was certainly hard to pull off, and he nearly managed to do it. As for Ben, as always, good target priority, bringing down units and punishing mistakes on the Wood Elf front. Of course, he himself allowed Lewin to get up in the skies, surrounded and just beat down really hard. Even with all his buffs, he couldn't quite managed to get out of that one alive, and he didn't have the bow support either at that moment with the army moving up. But good composure as always, despite, you know, having a heavy loss straight away of losing your lord, which is disastrous a lot of the time, managed to scrap it back there and get a really solid Pyrrhic victory. So guys, if you want to see your replays up on the channel, feel free to join my Discord and send them in via there. There's a link down below in the description, as well as a link to other ways you can support the channel. So until next time guys, peace, and as always, stay awesome.